Hello and welcome to a Path of Exile video where I'm not really going to be playing, but I'm going to be crafting an item. I'm going to be teaching you how to craft an item, and what I'm going to be crafting is going to be an in-game helmet for a different build. I've actually started to cannibalize my previous Blade Vortex build. I'm selling all my gear, and I'm gonna level up a new character. I'm going to do something completely different. But while I'm buying the new gear that I'm going to be using, I came into a bit of an issue with the helmet. The helmet that I wanted, there wasn't a lot of them available for a reasonable price, and I figured I would just try my luck at crafting my own. So the thing about helmets that you have to understand, the lab enchants are incredibly important to get on your helmet. So if you don't know what a lab enchant is, the Eternal Labyrinth offers you the ability to enchant your gloves, your boots, or your helmet. So just looking at this real quick, the glove enchantments, you can see there's a pretty decent amount of them, but there's not a whole lot. 30, maybe? I'm not sure the number, but not much, okay? Boot enchantments are very similar. There's not a whole lot of them. And so what you have to do is you have to run through the lab, which can take you like 5 to 10 minutes, and then you get to the end of the lab and you put an enchantment on your gear. It does not take very long to run lab and get a good enchantment for your boots or gloves. But for the helmets, it's a totally different story. Because helmets, for whatever reason that GG decided to balance it in this way, there are a insane amount of helmet enchantments because they all pertain to different skills in the game. There's a total of 1,193. Yeah, that's ridiculous. So what that means is, like, if you run lab and you just, put on 20% increased animate weapon duration, if you're not using animate weapon, it's going to be useless to you. However, if you do get the one for your build, like if I get, it's Ice Nova. If I were to get the Ice Nova enchantment, there's two of them, either 25 or 40%. Even 25 would be good, but 40% increased Ice Nova damage is such an insane boost to your DPS with just a single enchantment that it really does make it worth it to pay a lot of money for a helmet that has that enchantment. So you have two options. You can either buy yourself or craft or whatever a really good helmet that has insanely good modifiers, and then you can just run labs until your eyes melt out of your face, and for the perfect enchantment out of the 1,192 of them, which that sounds terrible, honestly. Or do what I'm about to do. So people run labs. So this is what they do, right? People will run labs over and over and over again, enchanting items that aren't special, just very cheap items. They enchant them, and then they sell them on the market for like 1 to 2 exalts plus or whatever. What I was able to do was pick up this right here. This is an int-based item, so it's perfect for my build. All int, no dex, no strength. It's the Necromancer Circlet. And this item has 40% increased Ice Nova damage, the higher tier of the Ice Nova damage modifier that I'm trying to get. I bought this as a gray item for 1 exalt for this, which is a really good price. So the idea is I'm going to turn this into the best in slot item for my build. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is look on PoE Ninja. So I've pulled up these two builds because these are the ones that I'm going to be following. These are the two builds I'm going to be trying to copy. They're both basically the same, and they both have these helmets with the same lab enchant that I'm going to be using. But what you can notice about both these items is that they have maximum power charge, +1 to maximum power charges, and nearby enemies have -9% cold resistance. So that's penetrating 9% cold resistance. That's really insane. That's really, really good. Maximum power charge is obviously very, very good. Power charges are very good. They both have this, which leads me to believe that that is very good, because these are the two highest DPS builds on PoE Ninja. And what you also might notice is that they are both Redeemer Warlord, because the power charge modifier is a Warlord modifier. The cold resistance penetration modifier is Redeemer modifier. So already we're talking about a pretty expensive item just based on the fact that it has double influence and it has 40% Ice Nova enchantment. So just based on those 3 factors alone, it's going to be expensive, and we can check that out right here. What I have searched here is literally just power charges and then the resistance modifier, which will automatically make all of these items Redeemer Warlord. And this is without the Lab Enchant. This is an item that does not have a Lab Enchant. Also, these items probably don't have much else going for them. Maximum mana, tier 4 roll, not very good. Who cares about rarity? Stun block recovery, not very good. But just because it does have the power charge and it does have the cold res, this is a 5.5 exalt item. And you can see that's the same story as you scroll down the page. You're looking at 5 to 10 plus exalts for items that just have those two modifiers. And maybe, as you start to get more expensive, they might be a little bit better. But that is without the Lab Enchant. So if I were to go ahead and slap on the Lab Enchant real quick. So 40% roll, so which is the best roll. And now we're looking at 15 exalts, 16, 20 plus, right? So we're getting much more expensive, and this is a terrible base. This is something you're not going to want to use. An evasion armor helmet? No thank you. This one has armor, energy shield? Nah, no thanks. Dexterity, strength? So only intellect, perfect item, 28 exalts. This one also has some cold resistance, so that's actually a pretty good item right there. But we're talking 25 exalts minimum for the kind of item that I want for my build. High energy shield, intelligence, no dex, no strength, with all of those good modifiers. And that's what I'm going to be able to make out of this item, because it has only int, and it is got the Lab Enchant. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is you want to start with the Lab Enchant, because you're able to pick up the perfect Lab Enchant for pretty cheap, considering. 1 exalts is probably the base price you'll ever pay, unless it's like a pretty niche enchantment. Ice Nova damage, this is going to be for a cast on crit build, so kind of a popular build, so people understand that Ice Nova damage is going to be a very good modifier. Something like Blade Vortex spell damage is also a very expensive modifier. The popular ones are getting more expensive, but basically I would assume 1 exalt is like the minimum price to pay for this. So where do you go from here? Well, you can see I've already made it into a Warlord item. So there's 2 options. You can either find a Warlord item that has the Lab Enchant, but that's going to be pretty rare. And if you do find that, it's probably going to be more than 1 exalt. You're probably already going to be investing your money into it. The Warlord Exalted Orb, however, is only 1.4 exalts right now. It's only ever going to be not much more than just 1 more exalt. So what I've done is I've invested 1 exalt for the item, and then 1.5 exalts for the influence by buying the orb and just slamming the orb. So now that cost me 2.5 exalts. So we're at 2.5 exalts so far invested into this item. What we're going to be doing is taking this item, and we are going to be rolling on this item via alterations and augmentations. So when you scour it, you don't lose the enchantment, and you also don't lose the influence. So it is still a Ice Nova damage item with Warlord influence. Now, if you go over to a really cool website called Craft of Exile, I'll show you how to use this real quick. What you're going to be doing on Craft of Exile is selecting a base group for helmet, and I'm going to be selecting only int, or you can just search the base. You can search it like this. So mine is a Necromancer Circlet, so I can just search Necromancer Circlet. It does all the extra work for you. And now you're going to select the crafting method. So we're going to be using alterations, which automatically decides alteration plus augmentation. The item level is sometimes important. I'm just going to go ahead and put what I have, which is a level 79 item. It's obviously only important if the roll you're trying to get is higher than yours, then you can't get it. So that's obviously a problem. What this does for me, really, the fact that mine's only 79 and it's not higher than that, like 81, 82, is that the mods like cold resistance and like the resistance mods are going to be a lower tier than, possible. I'm not going to be getting those perfect resistance rolls. So that's just whatever. I'm happy with 25, 30 resistance, I'm happy with any of it, so I don't really care about spending a lot of money on a high item level base. This is fine, because the mod that I actually care about is only requiring level 75, but I'm getting sidetracked. So you put in your item level. Now you're going to put in your influences. And right now, as it stands right now, I only have Warlord influence. Because what I'm trying to do is land the maximum power charge. Now, if you check this out, the maximum power charge has a weight of 125, which is pretty low. That's a pretty rare modifier to get. The other influence, which I will eventually have, is Redeemer. And the other modifier that I will eventually have is this one right here, which you can see it's one-lined because the item level is too low for this. But that doesn't actually matter when you're using an Awakener orb. There's so much to talk about. I'm getting sidetracked after getting sidetracked. Basically, you're going to start by literally crafting one of the other mods. And then you're going to take an item that the second mod you want already exists on, like this one, for example. This is a Redeemer item where the mod already exists that I need, which is the Cold Resistance Penetration mod. Nearby enemies have -9 to cold resistance. So this item is going to be destroyed with an Awakener orb. The Awakener orb will destroy the item. It will remove the Redeemer mod, which is the Cold Resistance Penetration. It will bring it. I will then use that with my other item here once I get the power charges. And then it will create a new item, brand new rolls on everything, except it will remain a power charge and penetrating cold resistance. Those two will stay. So it's a suffix and a prefix. So then it will give me other random modifiers as if I just chaos spammed it or alked it. It'll just give me, it'll completely change the modifiers all over again. So what that means is when you're creating the first modifier, when you're creating the power charge on the Warlord item, it doesn't matter if you have other good rolls. So for example, if we just get started here with the transmutation, 79% increased energy shield. That's kind of decent, right? So you might think to yourself, oh, that's great. I'm going to want a lot of energy shield. So, and you know, I also rolled another modifier. So let's go ahead and regal it, right? Because I'm going to hope to turn it into a rare with the power charge. No, that's stupid. If you get a really insane modifier, like a tier 1 roll of some crazy thing, it doesn't actually matter, because when you turn this into a new item with the Awakener orb, that's going to go away. It's going to have no impact on the finalized item. So for the crafting process, all you're going to be doing is using alterations and augmentations. And if we look over on Craft of Exile once again, because I didn't even continue talking about this, once you put in the influence, you scroll down to the one that you want, the power charges, give it a click, and now it'll calculate the odds of success. And it tells me that it's going to take me on average 457 orbs of alteration, 116 orbs of augmentation. Essentially, it's going to take 457 tries. The cost of 457 orbs of alteration is something like 2 exalts or something like that. So on average, it's going to cost me another 2 exalts. So we've already put in 2.5. This is going to be another 2 on top of that. And for reference, I bought this item right here for 35C. What that means is, on average, I've already spent 2.5. It's going to cost me another 2 on average of alterations. So that's 4.5 plus 35C, which is like almost a half of an exalt. Close. So we're looking at like 5 exalts. Roll the modifier on this item with the average amount of tries. That's going to be 5 exalts. But then it'll be done. The only thing left to do is buy an Awakener orb, which costs like 4 exalts, I think. So then at that point, everything is going to be completed. Everything is going to be good to go. And it's going to cost me 9 to 10 exalts. The actual completed item, 9 to 10 exalts for a int base item with the Lab Enchant, with the power charges, with the other Redeemer mod, which we just saw earlier was 28 exalts. But this one has some other good stuff. So I'd say like 20-ish. And that's 20 considering no other possibilities. Because when I turn this into the finalized item, there's a possibility that it gets some insane rolls. There's a possibility that I get double resistance rolls. Energy shield, increased energy shield, like percentage increased resistances. So if all of that happens, it's going to be worth a lot more. And instead of me spending the money to just buy one of those items, I can instead spend an average of 10 exalts to craft it myself. And so that's what I'm going to be doing right now. So the next step in this process for me is to get the power charges. Of course, what we saw in Craft of Exile is that it's going to take an average of 400 something, which we can actually test real quick. So you can run a real-time simulation, and it's basically just going to keep trying on its own servers or whatever until it gets a huge database of information. That's about enough. I'll let it hit one more success just to sort of toll the numbers in my favor. Okay, perfect. So this is actually some pretty bad news here. For this particular simulation, the longest streak of not hitting this mod was 2,143 alterations. What that means is that it is entirely possible, but extremely unlikely for me to spend 2,000 alterations just now to do this. And the complete average across 17 different successes. So as if I did this 17 times, right? As if I successfully crafted this item 17 times, the average was 601. And what I have in the bank right now is 438. So hopefully I can nail this, get seemingly a little bit lucky, just a little bit lucky, and nail the power charges before having to buy more alterations. So here's the process of actually doing that. Also, I should mention that when you buy your Redeemer item, to destroy the Redeemer item, you have to make sure that there is only a single influenced modifier on the item. Because when you use the Awakener orb, it's going to pick from however many influenced modifiers there are. There could be 2 Redeemers, 3 Redeemers, there could be multiple Redeemer modifiers. You have to make sure that there is only one, because then it has no choice and it will only take the one that you want. And likewise, when you slam it into the new item, you have to make sure that there is only one Warlord modifier. Because if there's 2 Warlord modifiers, it's going to pick one of the 2. So let's say I get Global Crit Multiplier and I get Power Charges. I'm thinking to myself, oh, hell yeah, this is going to be insane. I have 2 of the best modifiers. And I slam it, and then I end up with Global Crit Modifier plus the Cold Res. Then it's suddenly an item that's not worth nearly as much as I would hope for, because I've lost the power charges. So the reason why I'm saying this is because when you see a situation like this, okay, a single mod that's not Warlord, I can then take an augmentation and try again. So basically I can save money on alterations because augmentations are very cheap. Alterations are not that cheap. So I can save my alterations a little bit by using augmentations whenever possible. So now I'm going to probably do a time lapse of me doing this over and over and over again until I finally get it. That's what I'm going to do now.